All right, welcome back to Mid-Tier Thoughts, everybody. This is Austin. I'm joined by Mike and the actual Stacker. We'll let him introduce himself here in just a second. So, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for coming back and listening again. We've got to pay the bills a little bit up front, so we've got Cedar Sewing Co. helping support us out on this episode. So he's got a discount code. Look for that in the description. It's going to be mid-tier 10. I know there was some issues with the website before was from some people who tried to look up his products after the last episode we had with them. But everything should be working now through a Shopify store. Use the code mid-tier 10 for 10% off of your next order. Other than that, guys, let's do it.
Yeah, dude.
Sweet.
So, Stacker, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit, just kind of tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Yeah, man, for sure. So, name's Bry, but I go by Stacker. Was a nickname that was given to me when I entered the private sector in 2017. I'm just a true patriot. Prior service, 240 gunner for 10th Mountain, and then finished off my military career with the National Guard. Like I'd stated, entered the private sector in 2017. Fought alongside some very good men over in the North Sinai district of northern Egypt. And now I'm just a social media influencer guy thing, I guess.
Hey. All right. Well, guys, as if you're not aware, September was September. Well, it's still technically September, so was and is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I think that's kind of what we all wanted to talk about a little bit here. Talk about some mental resiliency, mental health awareness, and just a topic I don't think is talked about enough in our community. And has a lot of stigma around it, and just kind of reach on that a little bit. I know we've all got our experiences. I know between me, Mike, and Stacker here, we've all got some military experience and different experiences for sure, and kind of talk about what's helped us and where we're at and how life is going in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% coming from the military world, all three of us, we all understand when it meant like buck up, quit being a bitch. Mental health really is not talked on enough. I've had to go to quite a few funerals for some of the people I served with, just because their mental health wasn't there. You never check on them. They're always good. They're always your buddies and everything like that. But yeah, everyone has their highs and lows, man.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's one thing if it's overseas or in certain aspects, but when you're going to the funeral for a guy that is a good buddy of yours that you thought everything was fine, and it's when it's the result of poor mental health, it hits a little harder.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's all you, bro.
No, definitely. I mean, to piggyback off the both of you, I think what makes it so difficult is that we were bred in an era where showing emotions or showing feelings was kind of shunned upon, especially in the military, right? And then so it's the kind of thing where we have this conversation with one another and it's, hey man, how are you? And it's, I'm all right, but deep down inside you're screaming, right? Because you don't want to show that weakness. And I'm sure as well with you guys, I've buried two close battle buddies of mine that I've served alongside due to suicide, and had everything in the world. One of them had just had a baby 2 weeks prior, and the last I had spoken to him, about 4 to 5 days before it actually happened, he was on top of the world. Cloud nine. You never would have thought. There were no red flags, there were no keywords, there were no incidences or behavioral differences. And then you get that phone call and you're like, it hits home, because you're like, what could I have done? Did I miss something? Was it something that I had said? Should I have asked? And you kind of have that, like, that guilt, that survivor's guilt almost kind of comes into play, like, man, dude. And it sucks, How are you supposed to help if you don't know, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't always have to hit like that with like end result of suicide, but it could even go down to working down on 32nd Street down in San Diego. A lot of people were totally normal. You would never know it. And then we'd have to go on base on a call through the residential areas or something like that, because some dad's getting absolutely wasted and fucking threatening the whole neighborhood with his gun, something crazy like that.
Yeah, substance abuse definitely takes it plays a huge role. I know that firsthand. For those that don't know, I actually just celebrated 6 years sober, two
That's
weeks
awesome.
ago. Thanks, man. Yeah. Um, so
You sound like a quitter to me.
yeah, AA's for quitters. But no, it's rough, man. Substance abuse, drugs. My crutch was alcohol. It's legal. It's the first thing that's asked at a restaurant once you sit down is, have you looked at our drink special? So it's like, it's in movies and it's at your Easter dinner and your Thanksgiving dinner, and so I battled with that for a while.
Especially being active duty, man. Like that's
Yeah.
how you bond with your buddies. That's how you bond with your
Yeah,
friends. Is drinking. You
Yeah.
all drink together.
yeah,
That's the thing is like, there really are a lot of really unhealthy habits that we get from our time in service, and that being one of them, to where it's like, hey man, this experience sucks, so I'm just gonna go get shit faced and forget about it. And it's one thing when you're 18, 19 and young and doing it with the boys in the barracks. It's another thing when you're 30 and then it's just sad.
Yeah, you're by yourself and your wife hates you.
right. Or she leaves you. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so crazy. We used to have these death by PowerPoints of, when you're stepping off, it's pay your hooker, don't drink and drive, don't beat your wife, right? and it's crazy. I became a statistic. I'm 32 years old. I'm on my second marriage. Thankfully now I'm sober. My first marriage ended terribly because of part of it was due to my an integral part of it was due to my substance abuse.
Yeah, that's actually funny that you said that, because I'm actually going to be married for my second time now. And my first marriage, obviously everyone gets married super young in the military. You get paid more money.
Right.
But so I thought I found love, got with her. She had a horrible drinking problem. That's what ended that marriage. She was active duty as well.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Yeah, the BAH definitely hits different once you sign that dotted line, dude.
You're like, what? I get to sleep with you and I don't have to live with black mold? I'm in.
Oh, dude, this is dope, dude. I'm not living 4 dudes deep in this room.
What's FireGuard?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks, man. And I really feel like I have a couple of buddies that are drill sergeants now, and especially with this new generation that's coming in, lethality from an infantryman standpoint has dropped to an all-time low, right? So they're no longer dealing with that, but what they're dealing with now, unfortunately, is dealing with emotions, managing emotions, but not necessarily on the mental health aspect of it, more in line with like gender, you know what I mean? And do you feel out of place? Where, I'm pretty sure everyone here has gotten that pamphlet with the hotline 988 phone number. And if you feel, but it's they go right over it. They hand it out and then it's okay, cool. What's the next topic? And it's like, we really need to sit down and identify these things and have deep conversations with, let's say a superior, an XO or some sort of commander, and I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a sit down privately. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of soldiers that you have to go through, but a quick, how are things? How are you? How's things at home? How are things with the missus? Because if you're not good at home and you're not good at work, you're no good for the military, period.
Well, and from a leadership perspective, I mean, that's just good leadership, like, is to know what's going on in the personal lives of the people you're in charge of, and what problems are they facing? How can I make things better? Is there something I'm doing that's making this worse? Because like your first and only job is to make sure that you take care of your guys, and like you said, if they're not good at home and they've got other stuff going on, they're no good to you there because their mind is somewhere else.
Yeah. Even on the other spectrum of, like, rather than the military side going civilian side, I dealt personally with this huge depression. Because like in the military, I was very depressed because I hated my life, because I hated my job, this and that and that. You hate the people you're with, you hate your command. But when you get out, all that hate you had, you feel like it's just going to disappear, but it just stays dormant inside you. And when you start living in the civilian world, you have this hatred inside you, and it kind of turns to a miss or a sorrow. Like, I mean nothing in the civilian world, because in the military world, I had responsibilities. I had these things going. And then when you get in the civilian world, no one's on your back. You're all up there on
Right.
your own. And the worst part about it is you don't have your friends anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hardest thing I have struggled with being a civilian is just making friends, because
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
none of them, everything they bullshit about, everything they talk about is it just seems so pointless. It seems like it's what they're doing is so small and minuscule in the broad spectrum of everything, and it's almost annoying to try to make these friends.
I was just
Agreed.
talking to my wife about this, where I was like, it's really hard because it's like, you're all swapping stories around the water cooler or something at like an office job, and that's why I think like the veterans kind of like, or people of that kind of mentality and this kind of community gravitate towards each other. Even if they're not veterans, but more like in this Minuteman style community type of thing, is just because we can kind of get those similar experiences and understand where we're coming from. Because it's like, how do you explain a deployment to somebody who has no idea, and all they're going to be doing the whole time is just be like, oh, just thank you for your service, or like,
Right.
oh, I've never
Yeah.
experienced that. You're like, I'm not sitting here trying to toot my own horn and be like I'm better than you. I'm just like, you asked a story, I'm telling you a story.
I'm trying to talk about the Afghani family I mowed down and had to dig the bullets out of their skulls.
Seriously. What's an exfil? What are you getting off the X? What X? Is there treasure there? What X are you getting off of? Yeah,
It depends
it's
on your
difficult. It's
yeah.
definitely difficult,
And
man. It's
and
go
what
ahead.
they don't tell you when you get out either is that I dealt with this personally. I don't know if Austin or you dealt with it, but I had this loneliness. Like all of the friends I had, all the birthdays I do, the things I get invited to all the time. You take it for granted while you're in, because you're like, oh fuck, like I just don't want to drink 6 nights in a row,
Yeah.
or just have those buddies that you can call up and just bullshit with and drink a beer with. And then when you become a civilian, and it's kind of like they forget about you. And I never really thought about it, because I did it to people that I was personally friends with. Like as soon as they got out, I kind of ghosted them. Like it
Yeah.
didn't mean anything to me, because they were no longer active. They couldn't help me in my job. They couldn't help me in my career. They couldn't help me do the work. So they kind of stop existing to you. You stop getting invited to those things, and then all of a sudden you go to a different command and this and that. So all of your friends get dispersed around the country, but you're still in the same spot.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was actually just thinking about that. I shit you not, 2 days ago in the shower, of how so during my transition from military to civilian it was almost at the height of my alcohol abuse, and I remember going through that lonely phase of going through a divorce and losing everything, right? And falling deeper into that rabbit hole and saying, man, not a single one of my guys from my weapon squad has reached out to see if I was okay.
Yeah.
Like, and I felt betrayed, and I felt hate and anger and sadness. Like, man, like we've slept in the same foxhole together. We've been little spoon, big spoon with one another during winter FTXs. Like we were buddies. Like I've eaten off of your plate. Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
those bonds, that brotherly bond that you think would be there forever. It's like the moment you transition out, it's kind of like you're forgotten about. And it's so funny that you say that. I was just thinking about that, not having that tribe anymore, that circle,
Yeah.
right? And
When it,
that's tough.
it's funny you guys bring that up too, because I think like part of that has to do with the environment when you're there. I know, like for me, it was one of those things where I was on active duty when I was like, dude, I can't wait to get off active duty. I just don't
Yeah.
want to be here anymore. But then anytime someone in front of me would get off active duty, you'd be like, man, what a pussy, what a quitter.
Right.
You
Right.
know, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just like it could, because everywhere else around you is like, why would you not want to stay in the military forever? And then like between things like that and people trying to scare you about getting out, and you're like, why am I going to listen to some 35-year-old dude whose only work experience is in the military tell me how I can't make it as a civilian?
That's another big
Well,
thing. Like when you go from military to civilian, you have this like expectations that you're like, nah, I'm better. I'm better than these chiefs that dedicated their lives to staying in, because fuck them, dude. They can't make it in the civilian world. And then you go in the civilian world and you don't
it's
immediately become
hard.
a millionaire, and you're like,
Yeah.
I failed. Like I am a failure, and it
Yeah.
sucks.
I've tried
Yeah.
explaining to civilians many times, right? So there's been a couple of times within the last 2 years where I almost re-enlisted for the simple fact of wanting that feeling of belonging again, of serving a purpose, of putting on a uniform and being proud. And a lot of people, whether it be at work or whoever, would say, well, I don't understand, dude. Like, you did your time, you served your country, right? You've got a family now. Like, you played with fire, you won, dude. You're out. Like, why would you go back? And I would try to my best to explain it to them. And the way I would always put it is, you think the military is hard, right? Less percent is what joins the military, X, Y, and Z. Then less than 1% is the infantry or whatever it may be. But what they fail to realize is the military is easy. Done for you. You're told where to stand, where to report to. The DFAC has the chow that you need. Your SGLI is taken care of. Your insurance and your taxes are all filed for you.
Your doctor's appointments, your dentist appointments are made for you.
Everything. It's easy. Then you got to go into the civilian world and you got to choose between Kraft and Annie's mac and cheese. And you're like, dude, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah. Dude, when I had to try to figure out how to set up a dentist appointment on my own for the first time, I felt like a complete retard.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, how is this? Like, why do I not know this? Like,
why is someone telling me
once I've been going once a quarter, every quarter for the last 4 years. I have to figure it out myself now, and I don't even know how to find a dentist.
Right.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie to you. When I first got out, my first ex-wife, she was a horrible person. Like, didn't do any of this stuff, right? But then now I have a girlfriend and fiance now, but she does everything for me. If I didn't have her, dude, I would not know how to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think too, like kind of along the lines of what we're talking about. I think with I like re-enlisting and things like that, you know. For me, like when I did my first 4 years, like I joined the military wanting to deploy on active duty and wanting to go do something, you know. I think all of us, you know, grew up after seeing 9/11 and felt like we had to do something to do our part, right?
Mine wasn't that. Mine was my deep-rooted Viking heritage, and I had to get right with it. I'm like, I have to go kill someone else in a different continent.
What, you're Filipino Vikings?
Dude, it's crazy because I don't look Scandinavian at all. Like I'm kind of short, brown, like everything like that, black hair. So I'm black. I'm black, Japanese.
You're Filipino Superman.
So like all the time I joke about Scandinavian shit, and like no one would think. No, not
That's
a million.
So funny.
But yeah. But yeah, I think for me, like the biggest thing was like, you know, I joined up to go do something on active duty. And on active duty, my first 4 years, I was stateside the whole time, you know? And so I got out and I did wait. Yeah, I know. I wound up doing way cooler stuff and doing a lot more in the reserves than I ever did active duty. But the thing for me was always struggling with, like, I never felt like I did enough, right? Yeah. Like I didn't do enough.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy I used to work with, and his name was Josh, and he'd been a ranger who lost his leg at the hip on the right side, and they actually named like the whatever they used to attach the fake leg with after him because he was like one of the first people to survive that kind of injury. And I was sitting one day talking to him about that, and I was like, man, like. I was like, I just don't feel like I did enough, because you always, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's always a bigger fish. There's always someone who's more busted up than you are, or someone who's done more than you are. So you feel like, you know, you got to compete, like not compete, but like you haven't done as much as they did. Right. And there's like something else you need to do still. And like, he talked to me one day and he's like, dude, look, you threw your hat in the ring and they didn't pull your number. Right. Like that's not your fault. Yeah. You know? And he's like, look, you're going to be chasing that dragon until you're in a pine wood box.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're going to miss out on all of your life, and you're going to miss out on everything around you because you're going to be chasing a high that you can't catch. And I was like, when he sat me down and told me that, I was like, man, no, when my buddy sat me down and told me that about how, you know, you're always going to be kind of chasing that dragon and feeling like you never did enough until, you know, eventually you chase yourself into a box. Like that really hit me. And it was like, you know, he's got a point. Like I'm trying, like, I keep chasing this and I'm missing out on my family. I'm missing out on my kids, on my wife, and I'm putting all of this ahead of them to try to, you know, to fill that gap that I feel. And I'm missing out on everything else, you know? And so I think that was a big thing for me was I think I know a lot of people who've gone through similar stuff to where they're like, oh, I just did this. Like, I know you and me, Mike, had experienced this a lot at the gun shop where we were like, people would always come in and try to overcompensate,
Yeah.
right? And be like, oh, I was insert all these buzzwords here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like,
there was
dude,
like 1,000 Navy SEALs in Vietnam. I've met 15
yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, like if you were a cook or like a clerk, like just own it, dude. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right?
You know who I have mad
Someone's
respect
gotta
for?
the paperwork. Someone's got to cook the food.
I have mad respect for that certain Marine that we worked with that never even saw outside the United States. And he was in the infantry. And I'm just like, damn, dude, that sucks. Like you got the short stick, man.
Yeah, and exactly, like someone like that who I know we and him have had talks with that before too, and it's like, look, dude, we all signed, we all put our name in the hat. It just, it's not your fault that they didn't pull it, or if
Right.
even if they did get pulled, and like I know buddies of mine who, again, been places, done things, been in harm's way, got shot at, right, but they didn't get, they didn't get hurt, so they didn't do enough as their buddy who got blown up, or the buddy who was missing pieces.
Exactly. It's
exactly. Yeah, and it just very informs of it, and it's one of those things where I think a lot of times, because you feel like, oh, I didn't do as much as the next guy,
right.
but you're always going to be chasing that high, and you're always going to be trying to be like, oh, well, I'm comparing myself to this guy. And I think the biggest thing that helped me out with that after that guy talked to me about that was just realizing, like, you know what, he's right. Like that was a different time in my life. That came and it went. It's over. It's done with. And I've got to focus on where my life is now and find meaning now. Yeah.
Yeah. You identifying. I struggle with that too. Shit.
Yeah. I absolutely. I mean, I'd say that's the hardest part, is trying to find new meaning in something that doesn't seem as meaningful.
That's what I go back to, like talking to these civilians, and I'm just like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, oh, my kid's got this play and this going on, so I'm busy doing this bullshit. And like I sit there and I go, everything you say means fucking nothing in the broad spectrum of it, but it actually does. Him and his family, the all of it, you need that. You need to move on.
Yeah.
That's tough. I think it is tough. It's the hardest part, I think. And I think sometimes what happens. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, me as well. When you were talking about re-enlisting, I was actually talking about it too.
Yeah, dude. Austin knows, I just turned down a contract to Ukraine.
Yeah.
That I was so gung-ho about going over. And a big part of the reason why I'm staying, I don't want to say the reason why I'm staying, I want to say a driving force and someone who had opened my eyes, was just a conversation that I had with Austin, of putting everything in perspective. I've got small children, and you feel selfish, right? And it's like, I'm doing this because I want to do it, and I want to go, and I want to fight, and I want to possibly not come back. And it's like, but dude, like you said, like you threw your name in the hat, your number wasn't called, dude. Congratulations. Like you made it, man. Like you lucked out. Like you don't have to come back missing a leg or with any more mental health issues than what you already have. You know what I'm saying? Like, how dare you put yourself in harm's way knowing that there's people depending on you? And shoot, I've made the decision to not go, but that doesn't mean that I haven't stopped thinking about it. I went into the private sector for that same reason, because I never deployed when I was in the service, and that was exactly what it was. I got to do something, dude. I can't sit here having these conversations with these guys and like, where you been? Nowhere. I was stateside the whole time. You know what I'm saying? So I made it a point. I lucked out. I had a friend that was a POC, and within the company that we went over with, and he guided me throughout the whole process. And next thing you know, within 2 months of ETSing, I was on a plane to Cairo. And I'm grateful for that experience and what I've done and what those men that I was in the same trucks with meant to me. And that still, I still have relationships with those guys now, friendships with those guys now. But then to say, man, all right, dude, like you went there, you handled business, right? You're back.
Yeah.
Have fun watching your daughter play soccer on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
who
It
there's
hits home,
people
man.
yeah, dude. I know people that would chop off their left testicle to be in my seat, and I sit here taking it for granted,
Yeah.
and that's something that I have to still deal with now, as many of us do, you know.
hmm
I'm no exception.
Couldn't be put better, man.
You
Yeah,
know?
you know what I think the big thing too is I had a different friend that again, Mike, you know Dan.
Yeah.
Um, he told me one time where he was like, and he's a buddy of mine. So my buddy Dan's a buddy of mine who's been in the army, and
Hey guys,
um,
this is where I gotta dip out. I appreciate you so
all
much
right,
for talking. Let's have you back on again, dude. Let's do this. I want to make this a recurring thing, dude. You're fucking dope.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that, man. You too, dude.
all
All right,
right.
guys. I'll talk to you later.
See you, Mike. We're
I
gonna
love you.
continue with me and Stacker.
I love you, bye.
Dude, I'm about to nut.
Told me my buddy Dan who was in the he told me like for him when he kind of came to that realization it was that like the buddies he lost along the way wouldn't want us to be pissed off and sad all the time.
Yeah.
They would want him to live that life that they didn't get to live.
For sure, man.
They would want him to be happy and to live those lives. And I think that's the biggest thing, is you just got to find that reason to get up in the morning, and that new drive, and you have to find whatever it is that gets you going. You just got to find a new purpose. And I know that can be really hard. And it's funny when you brought up, talking to other guys about, oh, what'd you do? I remember coming straight out of A school. So in the Navy, it's A school is like AIT for you guys in the Army or whatever
Gotcha.
your like secondary school what thing is, right?
Yeah, I went to OSA, which I think they made us do an about face and then another about face, and they were like, "Welcome to OSA," because it was like in the same place.
Oh yeah. So in the Navy, like everyone goes to Chicago, goes to what's Great Lakes, and goes to boot camp there. Then you skip out to your A school. So I went down to San Antonio, and then you get like a couple days of leave between there and your first duty station. And I remember I was flying home, and I was at the USO in Milwaukee, and I'm sitting there like hanging out. And this big group of dudes walks in, and they're all chit chatting. And one of them looks over at me, he's like, "Hey man, what's your deal?" I was like, "Oh, I just got out of A school. I've been in the military for all of like 4 months." And they're like, "Sick. We just came home from our second deployment to Iraq." And I was like, "I'm gonna leave."
Yeah.
Because it's just like this. You're like, "Oh, I don't even want to be in this room because I can't relate."
Right.
So,
You feel so out of place. You're like, I have not earned the right to sit in this circle and listening to you guys talk.
right. Because it's while there is a little bit of like earning your spot and gaining respect, it's also been too that like some of the coolest people I've met that have done some of the wildest stuff are like they're super humble and like they don't care. Like they don't care if you were a cook. They don't care if you
Right.
were a clerk, right? They're just like, are you a good person? Sick. They're like, sick, you're a clerk, dude. Work the hell out of that paperwork. Make sure I get paid on
Hell yeah.
time. You're a
Seriously.
cook. Cook some bomb ass food, dude. Like, I don't care what you are. And that's the thing. It's like, I think there's so much, especially like seeing it, like working in the gun industry, there's so many people that overcompensate where like every dude over 40 that walks into the gun shops, like, yeah, I was a ex Ranger SEAL sniper Marine. And you're like, what? Like,
Yeah.
that like, that's bullshit, right?
We could smell it, and that's what I love too, especially dealing with people that try to overcompensate. Is there's the key words that are used within the sentences that you kind of look at one of your buddies with that side eye, and you're like, yeah, this is bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like everyone, it's like, it's like, wow, it's like everyone I've met today that was a veteran was a sniper in special operations.
Jesus,
What have
those
we
are
got?
all they're all the freshmen from high school that went to the recruiters. Like, I'm gonna be a MARSOC sniper, dude.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you're 13, dude. You're gonna be a 0311, bro. That's it.
It's like that. Like that. You're disrespecting a future U.S. Army soldier.
Hey, did you know that he actually enlisted?
At that point, right? You know how sad it would be if he didn't.
Oh, seriously, he actually enlisted. I showed my wife the video of it, and then there was a side picture of us, like of him 10 years later in ACUs. And I was like, right on, dude. You better be a freaking, you better be SF or something, 18 X-ray contract, bro.
Yeah, you got to be a stud at that point, man.
Seriously, man. No
That's
chow
funny
hall warrior here, dude.
for sure. But yeah, man, I think that's the biggest thing is like you got to find an outlet. I think like personally for me, like a big thing like between talking to all you guys on Instagram and doing the podcast and just getting into environments with other like-minded people has been a huge thing for my mental health because it's made me
Right.
feel like I'm not alone in that. And that I think that's a huge part of it. You know, we always talk about, you know, oh, this community. And we just use that word in the sense of like it's just a lot of people have shown similar interests. But like my goal is to make it like an actual community, you know, where we're,
Yeah.
you know, I know talking with you and talking with some of the other guys that we're in group chats with in on Instagram and in other platforms and stuff, like we've kind of built that, you know, and I think that's the beauty of it is you can have all these friends around the country that, you know, we've all opened up to each other about, you know, important stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, 6 months ago, all of you guys were just strangers on the internet to me, you know,
Right.
and now here we're talking like this. And I think that that's a big part of this that I think people should embrace. You know, there's a lot of bad crap about the internet, a lot of bad crap about Instagram, but there could be some good stuff about it too. And I think like if we can kind of embrace that a little bit, we can make some significant progress.
For sure. I think what becomes difficult, and I joined and I made that page, the actual Stacker one now for that same reason was because I needed to connect with people that shared the same interests as I did. Because I do have a personal page, which I no longer use because I would post things about the military or me at the shooting range doing some John Wayne shit, and nobody would like it. I'd get no love. And I was like, why am I editing, doing all this kind of stuff, but no one's enjoying it? So that's when I started the page. And I think what makes it difficult for me um, is where I live in contrast to where you guys live, right? So you guys are a little bit more closer together out west, whereas I live in New England and being in a castrated state of Connecticut, it's difficult. I can't do the things that you guys can do. To look at some of you guys on a weekend and say, I'm rucking up plate carrier and M4 and we're going out with the boys over the weekend to build lean-tos and Dakota fires. I'm like, I wish I had that opportunity here. I don't have that. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? But to be able to share content and ideas and um, ideologies and have people on that same mental plane as I am it's a great refreshment. It's a refresher for me. It's a good
Right.
feeling.
Well, I think that's
I'm
the
not alone. I'm not alone when I say that one day they're going to be Chinese or Russian paratroopers falling from the sky and you're going to wish you stocked up on 62 grain versus hand sanitizer. Because
yeah.
people here, my neighbor's stocking up on toilet paper and I'm stocking up on ammo. And he's like, well, why would you do that? And it's like, well, because a please no, sir, don't, raid my house isn't going to suffice when shit like that hits the fan. You know what I mean?
Well, hey, you know, when 15 years from now I hear about the great stacker warlord of the East Coast, I'll know, I know,
Yeah,
I'll know who you're
the old glory defender.
talking about.
Hell
Hey,
yeah, man.
yeah, man, I mean, I totally get it, and I think that that's the biggest thing is you know, if you are unfortunately in a position like that, and this goes to our listeners too, to where you're in a position to where due to the environment, the laws, the country you're in, whatever, if you're having, you know, if you're not able to go out and be like, hey, I'm gonna go do this stuff with the boys, or I'm gonna go do this prepping thing or the shooting thing or whatever, and you can't get that sense of community, like try to find that at least with people that you can talk about and talk to, you know, and you can reach out to me anytime. This goes to you too, man. I know you and I talk a lot on there, but like, you know, you guys can reach out to me on my page. You know, and anyway, if any of our listeners are in the New England area and want to connect, like Stacker's info is going to be in the description to look them up on Instagram. Like, hit
For
them up,
sure.
man. Like, let's build a community of that out there. Like, let's get this going. You know?
Yeah, seriously, man. There's not I think what we're suffering from is everyone loves the idea of becoming a defender and or a patriot, but when it actually hits the fan, their priorities change. And I think that's a deep conversation that needs to be had with oneself is You know, you see it on movies, you see it, you know, on TV series, right? But when things like that do happen, good people do get hurt. And you might possibly be one of them. And you need to wake up to that realization. It's like saying, if I touch the stove, I'm going to burn myself. Well, if you're not ready for that, don't touch it. Stay out of it.
Yeah, I think there's a big thing too with that where I've talked about this a little bit on my page where you need to have a serious conversation with yourself and from a historical standpoint, very, very rarely do events happen like immediately, like just
Right.
overnight, right? Like very rarely in history does it just happen where one day your life is totally normal and then the next day is red dawn and the Chinese
Right.
are falling from the sky. There's
Right.
generally buildup. There's generally like series of things that go wrong, and it's usually like the metaphor of like the frog in the pot, right? Where if you turn the heat up instantly, it's going to jump out. But if you turn it up 1 degree at a time until you reach boiling, and you let it get used to that temperature change, it'll let itself die,
I've never heard
right?
of that. That's amazing. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm probably butchering the thing, but yeah, the whole concept is like if you put a frog in a
Made
pot,
sense to me.
yeah, immediately boil the water, it's out, right? Thing that's like if you wake up tomorrow and the government's like we're at war with everybody, you're like okay, hold on, right? But if they spend years, you know, demonizing the political opposition, slowly stripping you away of your rights, getting you used to mandates, getting you used to things that aren't laws being the way things are, getting you used to not having firearms, things like this. And it continues. Eventually, by the time that it's time to stand, you don't have anything left to stand with. And you're like, how did it get to this point? You know,
Right. Right.
like Hitler didn't ship the Jews off on day one, right? It was a slow process, right? We're going to slowly take things away from them. We're going to make them wear these things on their shirts. We're going to demonize them in the public. And eventually, it took years to get to that point. But by the end of it, we all know what happened.
You're in
So,
the thick of it. You're already above your head and you didn't even notice.
right. So it's one of those things where, very rarely do things happen to where it's like, oh, today's the day, revolution started. I'm ready, time to go.
Right.
So you gotta talk to yourself and see, like, do a self-realization, an honest, brutal one of like, where am I at? Like, what if something were to happen today and my goal is to survive for X amount of time, where am I at with that? But
Right.
also, like, what are my lines that have to be crossed before I act?
Yeah. True.
And to be serious about it, be like, hey, is it if like, again, looking back historically, you look at the Civil War, the South had a very hard line of like, hey, if Abraham Lincoln gets elected, he's already said he's going to ruin our whole slavery thing. We don't want any part of it. So if that happens, we're out, right? And then it happened. For other states that wound up leaving later and joining the South, it was less of Abraham Lincoln. Like Virginia, for example, didn't leave over Lincoln. What they left over was they Lincoln came to them and said, "Hey, you need to build up an army of 70. Like we're building up an army of 75,000. You need to contribute troops. We're going to go march on North and South Carolina."
Yeah.
And they were like, "You want us to fight our neighbors?" And so
Yeah.
that was their line, was like, no, we were cool with everything else. This is it, right? So you got to find like what your line is, right? Because it's not, people have this idea of like, if we're going to have an internal conflict or an external conflict, that we're just going to wake up one day and troops are falling from the sky and it's like, oh my God, what happened? It's going to be
Right.
slow, incremental. And if they do it right, you'll wake up one day and just be like, oh, we lost.
Hmm. I feel like that
So
internal fight has already started though. It's been started. And
yeah,
what I think bogs us down and blinds us the most are our everyday comforts, right? So we excuse me, we have the luxury of sitting in traffic for an hour on the way to work, but it's an unpaved road, right? We have the
yeah,
luxury of pulling over to a Dunkin' Donuts and getting an iced coffee, right? We have the luxury of sitting on the couch and watching TV and complaining about the riots and all this stuff. And wow, shortages here, shortages there. But you go to your cupboard, you got food, right?
right.
So,
It's really hard to convince people to join a revolution and to change like a big part of your life when you have Netflix and can DoorDash food to your door.
right. It's so true compared to walking down on a dirt path filled with holes and little parasitic potbelly kids are sitting on street corners holding signs at the age of 7 with their infant child because their mother and father were killed overnight.
Yeah, and
Completely different ends of the spectrum, but people forget to realize that.
absolutely. I mean, a lot of people thank God we live in the United States because we do, we're spared from a lot of what is very normal for the rest of the world.
Yeah, people don't
Like,
understand that. I hate it when, and I've seen it firsthand.
yeah,
I've seen it firsthand, and I can't stand it when people downplay the United States. And okay, cool, we get a lot of shit wrong. Our politicians are shit. Yeah, cool, we know that. But you have the right to speak negatively of your president and not have any repercussions. Dude, you do that in some of these third world countries, you're getting pulled out of your house at 2 a.m. and you're going to get beheaded in front of your wife and kids.
yeah. I mean, that's what I'm
Or
saying.
then you're going to go into the work and sex trade.
You can literally go out. You could fill up stadiums in every major city, telling people how evil the government is, how just trash everyone involved in any situation of power, right? And nothing will happen. You do this in other countries, right? And like you said,
car bomb. Your
like
car's not limited.
yeah, and not just you, but like your followers. I mean, everyone. Like I remember my buddy was stationed in Bahrain during the Arab Spring back in I think it was 2011, 2012, something like that. And there was a video on Live Leak, and it was basically these two APCs roll up and make a V as a roadblock, and there's protesters and stuff, and it's all translated. And they're basically saying cease and desist in the name of the king, and the people move a little further, and the dudes on the APCs just open up on the crowd with 50s.
Yep.
And you're like, that, and we whine and moan about oh, we tried to loot a Nike and they tear gassed us. It's like, right. These dudes got shot with 50s for requesting democracy. Have some perspective.
Seriously, dude, we don't realize how good we have it. But I feel like little by little, with the way that the world is turning, we're going to start losing those kind of things. You know what I mean? And that's one of my fears are. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a prepper or I'm some sort of conspiracy theorist. All I know at the end of the day is that it's not the government's job or law enforcement's job to take care of my family and protect them. That's my job. You know what
exactly.
I mean? And
exactly.
If I don't do it, you think Joe Schmo, you think my neighbor next door who watched my kids grow up, at the end of the day, when shit hits the fan, that they're going to take my family's well-being into consideration? They got their own to take care of.
Yeah, and the other thing too is another way of thinking about it. The more prepared you are for any type of disaster, and things happen all the time, right? That doesn't have to be a disaster or a terrifying aspect of things, but like recently I went through a couple different job changes in a very short amount of time. And financially, it was pretty rough, right? But having stuff stored away, like food, a little bit of money stashed away, things like this, really helped because I didn't have to wonder, oh, hey, how am I feeding my family this week? And so it can be everyday life stuff that happens too, brother. like just losing a job,
Yeah.
Other things too that if you think about it. If you're like, okay, it's my job to protect my family no matter what the circumstance. So, I can protect them physically, financially, through with food, with medical supplies, with all the stuff I can provide for them. And if that's the case, well, then how many other people can you help?
Right.
If you're squared away and you've got, I'm not saying just go out and give everybody everything. But I think there's a lot of things that people take from those doomsday prepper shows that were real popular a few years back.
Yeah.
That everyone would be like, the minute they step on my front door, I'm gonna kill everybody. I'm killing all my neighbors. F them. They can't have my food. And I'm like, okay, that's one way of going about it. On the other side, though, I understand the mentality of well, they didn't prepare and I did, right? But it's okay, well, if you have this 3-year food supply that you're talking about, you could probably buy some goodwill with your neighbors. Here's a couple of MREs, keep your kids fed for another week.
Right.
And they'll probably be like, oh crap, man, that's he helped me out. I'm gonna make sure he's good.
Right.
Well, something happens. Something happens. I'm taking care of this guy. He helped me out when I went through a hard time.
You touched on it in one of your previous episodes of I don't know if it was like a Minutemen episode or something, but I think, and I loved it. You were talking about everyone in your tribe should have a role, right? So it's that kind of thing where it's like, cool. So your neighbors show up and it's like, hey, listen, like we'll help you out, but I know you're really good with comms. Do you mind setting this? Like if it was an IT guy or something, it's like it's got
Yeah.
to be there. There needs to be this symbiotic relationship on my end because if at the end of the day all you provide to me is another mouth to feed, so I just have to feed you and your family now and protect you guys, my man. Here's a rifle. Take that rooftop with me because you got to put in work. You got to do something.
Right. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like my neighbor right now is an awesome mechanic on top
Right.
of being an HVAC dude, right? So like he's extremely mechanically inclined. I'm okay enough to like keep my car running, but like
For
anything
sure.
serious, I'm
Same.
watching this dude, like switch engines and like transmissions in his
Yeah, I
Jeeps
can't
and
do
stuff all the time. Like I have
that.
no idea what I'm doing, right? Like when it comes to that kind of thing, you know? And I'm like, okay, sweet, noted. Like if I, you know, I make friends with you. So even in an ordinary situation, if I have a car issue, you know, yeah, I want to make friends with you so that way we can take care of it. If
Right.
it's you know an oh crap kind of scenario, sweet, we need something mechanically done. You're the dude, right? Like I'll
Let's
trade
get
my
going
food.
on an
I'll trade my
alternator or a
food for
generator or
yours.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, like I will trade my goods for your skills.
100%. That's what this
So
country
I
was.
think
That's what this country was founded on. That's part of bartering and trading. Hey, you have something I need. Here's
right.
this for that.
Yeah, you know, and having like gold and silver things like that, like those aren't bad things to have. But at the end of the day, like you know, because there's going to be if there's any type of like collapse of civilization for any reason, there's always a rebirth of it, right?
Well, true.
But at the end of
True.
the day, in that meantime between the fall and the rise, that mid time where everyone's trying to figure out what the hell's going on, um, if you come to me and you're like, I have $1,000 worth of silver, can you
I
give
don't
me
give a
some
shit.
food, please? I'm like, what
Yeah.
the hell am I doing with your silver?
Yeah.
What is
Where am
that
I
going
going
to
to
do?
spend it? The CVS
Yeah,
is closed,
exactly. Right, exactly. But like, I can't go to Walmart. You know what I mean? Like, what am I going to do with this? That's cool and all. Like, great, good for you. But like, what am I going to do with silver? You know, like I don't have a reason. Like, it gets very Stone Age very quickly because you're like, okay, great. Well, you have $1,000 of silver. Homie over here has got 6 MREs. Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. You know,
right?
I'm trading with the dude who's got 6 MREs because I need food, or I'm trading with the guy who's got 1,000 rounds of 5.56 in exchange for fresh water or something. You know, like that's more where I'm at. And then like yeah, later on when society rebuilds itself and we've got a monetary system again, sure, silver dude wins. But in the meantime, during that like collapse stage, it's like, dude, that doesn't help me. I don't care about an
Collapse
iPad.
stage two is a lot is a lot longer than what I think. I think if there was some sort of internal collapse, we would be a long ways away before order is established. For sure.
Oh yeah. And the biggest thing I think too, um, the biggest thing I think too that I think a lot of people don't realize as well is like, I hope to God we can just fix our country and we never have to get to the Civil War point, right? I think from a historical standpoint, there's too many red flags to say that's the way that things are going to go. I
Yeah.
think unfortunately we will see some issues, some type of
Agreed.
conflict on some
Agreed.
level. The thing I think some people miss out on is to think that we would be able to have an internal conflict without outside forces getting involved is just naive.
I haven't even thought of that, to be
Well, I mean,
honest
think
with you.
about it. Think about it in this sense, right? So, like, from a historical standpoint, again, kind of history nerding myself out here a little bit. During the first American Civil War, we always think of it as North versus South, right?
Oh
But
yeah, that's fine.
The
Yeah.
British and French were very active in the Civil War for supporting the South, right? They wanted to break apart America. They actually used American logic against us by being like, well, you guys broke away from us, so why can't they break away from you?
Right.
Um, the French invaded Mexico, and during our Civil War, because we couldn't do anything to stop the French, and because we were fighting our Civil War, and their plan originally had been to potentially see how the war would go, and then march French troops up through Mexico after they'd conquered it into
Hmm.
Texas. And the Russian Empire at the time had sided with the Union and actually sent Russian warships to protect the West Coast from the British and the French. So, it was on the verge of being like an 1860s world war. And if you think today, like the influence and power that America brings, if we have our own internal conflict, it brings up like multiple things, right? One, how many other nations are going to want to take a part and support one side or the other, right? Or
Or
whatever
helping the
multiple
demise.
sides. Exactly, right? So like different countries are going to be like, if one side of this is going to come out the winner, who do I want to win? And who do I
Right.
want to fund? Who do I want to funnel money to? Do I want to like have the cartels take a role in this and be like terrorists on a mega level, right? Do I want, Chinese troops supporting one side or Russian money coming in with guns to support a different side, as well as the aspect of things of like, what happens during a civil conflict like that when you have troops overseas? Like they think about like Ramstein, Germany,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
bases in North Korea. When if there's an
And
issue, like
DMZ and Seoul.
yeah, I mean like what do you do when you have tens of thousands of troops who are politically divided?
Gridlocked. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean like do you just come out and you're like, yep, we're choosing one side and sticking with it, or you're like, nope, we're just gonna sit it out over here in Germany and wait for something to figure out, or like load up the planes, boys, we're going home, we got
Yeah,
some stuff to sort out.
I think Big Brother would possibly say stay put, but I think every true-blooded American soldier, at least from our generation, I really can't speak on the newer wave of Joe that has gone in lately because of everything that I hear. But I think you're talking 28 years old and up, possibly, that still holds old, true patriotic values. And every
Yeah.
single one of those military outposts posts would say, I don't know why the C-17 isn't on the runway yet. Get us the fuck out of here and bring us home because we
Right.
got
I
to
mean
go fight.
that's what I'm saying is I think like there's a lot of logistical sides and a lot of considerations that like some of us have kind of like this fantasy of like, oh, it's going to be like this or oh, it's going to be like that. Like, I don't think we're going to see, oh, these states seceded from the Union and formed new America. It's going to be like, hey, it's going to be like a giant American gang war.
Yeah.
Because even in states, like in individuals, with some exceptions, but like even like growing up in Washington State, right? Washington State has 29 counties. 5 of them generally blue. One of them's kind of purple, and the rest are red, right? So it's not like even if Washington was like, "Yep, we're sticking with the Democrat side," and it's this Democrat Republican divide, like that means half the state, like actually 3/4 of the state is still in an insurgency at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the thing I think is again, like kind of we talk about the creature comforts too. It's like we talk about this kind of stuff, but I don't think sometimes we realize like the gravity to where it's like, hey, running water's super awesome. It would really suck if that just got turned off.
100%. And it's so
You
funny
know?
because as a normal guy that wakes up in the monotony of sitting in traffic to go to work every day, those are constantly things that I'm thinking of. Like, I know that there's a running stream literally a block away from my house that would
Yeah.
obviously, you'd have to purify it and filter it and all that kind of shit. But I'm always looking. I took back roads to get to one of my job sites one day, and I'm looking on the GPS map and seeing the highly dense wooded area, and I'm like, could definitely bring the family up this way. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah. That's the thing is it's like, and I don't think that it's crazy to think like that. I mean, I think like that was normal for a long time.
right,
Like this era that we live in to be like, hey, everything is fine. We don't need to worry about this is very post Cold War.
right.
It's extremely modern. It's extremely new, you know, of this. No, everything is fine. Nothing bad will ever happen. And it's like, do you read a book ever?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Have you not seen trends? Do you not know what a trend is?
I mean, we thought we were untouchable and we got hit by we've America has always thought it's been untouchable because we have 2 vast oceans between us. Yet in 1941 we got hit by Japan, and in 2001 we got hit by whoever, controversial topic, but we got hit by whoever you want to say hit us in
Right.
2001.
Right. Whether it was
So
an
like
inside job or not.
right, whether yeah, whoever did it, it happened, right? So we're
It
not
did.
untouchable,
Right.
and we've
No
got all
longer.
kinds of stuff going on. Like that ocean is not as big of a barrier as it seems to be in 2023.
Well, especially with the way technology is going and the way other militaries are expanding. you know, listen, I'm a true patriot. I'm an American through and through. And I'm going to sit here, and this is probably going to ruffle a lot of feathers. The United States is not the greatest country it once used to be. And our military superpower is slowly but surely going to start dragging into second place because of the people that we have across those oceans. And it's the truth. And we don't want to
Yeah.
believe it. But until we wake up, nut up, and actually do something about it, we're slowly going to get pushed into second and third place. And if you're
Well,
okay with that, that's totally fine. But if you're not, let's do something.
I think we're kind of experiencing something similar to like Great Britain, where
Yeah.
at one point England owned a third of the earth, right? A third of Earth's surface was controlled by the British. And then over time, it kind of waned and waned. And like Britain is still economically and militarily a regional power. They still have a lot of weight
100%.
behind them. They can still throw a punch. They can still do what a world power needs to do, but they will never again be what they once were. And I think that that's kind of where we're starting to fall into a little bit is that
Yeah.
we're still a regional power. We're still a world power. We're strong. We have like economically, geographically, like we have all the makings of a superpower, but we've let things slide. And so I think the world is going away from having like one superpower and a bunch of other countries trying to compete against it to kind of more like pre-World War One, where you're going to have multiple powers, right? Like you think like
Right.
pre-World War One, you had Germany, France, England, Russia, the United States, Japan. We kind of ran the joint, right? But you kind of
Right.
ran
Right.
your own respective area, right? Like we kind of North and South America, that's for us. Europe, you stay out. Europe
Right.
gobbled up Africa and different parts of the world. I think that's kind of what you're going to start seeing is you're going to see these kind of regional, like you're going to have NATO, or the EU as being its thing. You see Russia as its thing, China as its thing. Maybe something pops up in Africa. Maybe something pops. Maybe Brazil takes ownership of South America type of deal. But I think that's kind of where we're starting to get to, unfortunately. And it can be avoided. The biggest thing is we have to turn around and we have to care about our country again.
Right. And that's going to be our biggest downfall, aside from the fact that a majority of everything that we wear, use, smell, and eat comes from overseas, right? So the import is one thing that we definitely have to get a hold of. But I think if there's going to be a destruction of the United States, it's going to be a self-destruction because it's going to come from within. Because we have never been more divided than we are now.
I agree. I think our biggest failure is to like we just don't instill in a sense of what it means to be an American.
Yeah.
We're so embrace it. We're so looking into embracing different cultures and different things like this. Which I got nothing wrong with if you're part Mexican or your parents are from Mexico, whatever, and you want to celebrate your heritage. That's fantastic. Great,
That's
cool.
the
You've
beauty
got a
of being an
cultural
American is that you can.
right. Exactly. You get to do that. But that also means that also doesn't mean that you just get to completely erode or ignore American values, right? And I don't mean that just at the Hispanic community. I mean that like across the board. I don't care where you came from. If you want to celebrate your culture and your family's history, that's one thing, and that is totally fine. But you also have to embrace the ideas of what it means to be an American and American values. Because like if I were to pack everything up I own and move to a foreign country and just be like, no, fuck you guys, I'm the American, I'm doing my thing, I don't want to blend, I'm not going to
Intent, you'll get
make it
lost.
very far.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
United States is the only place that's like that. It's I'm Hispanic. I'm a first generation American. My parents crossed over illegally back in 2000. I'm sorry, 1989 through Mexico, crossed the United States to the East Coast, and we landed where we landed. Right,
Mm-hmm.
but I just drew a blank. Where was I going with this?
American values.
Oh, yes. So I might be Hispanic American, right? My family might be from Uruguay. You know what happens when I go to Uruguay and I speak Spanish fluently with no accent? Guess what? They don't look at me as a Uruguayan. I'm an American
Yeah.
through and through. It's I forgot who said it. I think it was a rapper that said it, and he goes, "You know what?" He goes, and this is with the country's division, right? And I've used this in conversation and it blows people's minds because I don't think people think of it. Only in the United States are you black and I'm white. Or you're brown and that guy's yellow because he's or whatever it may be. Only in America are
Yeah.
we like that. That's a black guy over there. Me and that black
Yeah.
guy go to Switzerland, we're both American. He's not black and I'm not white. If we
Right.
both go to Indonesia or the Philippines or South America, he's not black and I'm not white. We're both Americans. And
Right.
we've lost touch of that, and it's sad. It's really
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. I think like the thing is like we've as a country too, I think we we throw our weight around a lot, and people talk about us being the world police, which if used correctly, I think could be a good thing. But I think the problem is we keep trying to solve the world's problems instead of trying to be like, hey, let's just make it to where like people are scared to fuck with Americans again.
100%. We are not there anymore.
One of my favorite movies, which is kind of an embellishment of a real story. It was made in the 70s. It's called The Wind and the Lion. It's an older movie. It's got Sean Connery in it. He actually plays a Moroccan Muslim because that guy plays literally everything but what he is. But the whole thing is like I think it was like in 1902 or something like that, 1901. It was during Teddy Roosevelt's presidency. An American at an American embassy in Morocco is taken by this guy whose name is Razula in protest against the Moroccan government, right? He kidnaps her. Theodore Roosevelt's response is to show up with the entirety of the United States Navy and 1,000 Marines and order the return of this American, right? Yep. To which the Moroccan government's like, oh, well, it's a cultural matter within our thing. We'll figure it out. Gives him 3 days. 3 days go by. He sends 1,000 Marines at bayonet point into the Moroccan capital and is like, too late. We're right. And that was over one woman and 2 children.
That's so crazy. I love that. I didn't even know that.
That's the kind of thing where I'm like, okay, if you had that kind of fear instilled that like if you mess with an American anywhere on the planet, we will show up outside your door and we will destroy, we will royally mess with your entire country until this one person's returned. I guarantee you people would not be messed with anymore.
100%.
Like those countries would ensure that Americans are taken care of.
Yep.
That they are safe. They were like, I don't care about the rest of everybody else. Make sure the Americans are fine. And you know what? I don't care if that's bad to say. Because I look at it where I'm like, look, dude, I want my people, my American people, I want Americans to be safe no matter where they are, right? If your own country isn't safe for your own people, but Americans are, I don't care. Americans are safe. That's your problem.
Love it. I love it. I couldn't agree more.
But yeah, speaking of things I love real quick, got to throw out this one out there a little bit. So Blackout Coffee is an awesome sponsor of ours. They are offering right now 20% off of your first order with the code that I'll put in the description. It's AUSTJ20. And you go to the link that I'm going to put in the description, insert that code, save 20% on your order, get some awesome coffee. They're a pretty good coffee company that makes really good coffee, but they also throw a lot of money at Pro2A sponsors and at Pro2A causes. They've supported a lot of the fights against gun control, and they don't donate to Democrats or get involved in sexual harassment lawsuits like some of the other companies that are out there. So not going to name any names, but they also start with black.
You know who you are.
Yeah. So you know who you are. Fight me. but yeah, man, it's been good having you on here. Any closing thoughts?
Just everyone who's tuned in, and everyone who follows me, who's followed me from day one, where I had 200 and now reaching 25,000. I appreciate every single one of you guys. Austin, you can vouch for me. My DMs are always open. If you guys ever want to chat, if you guys are having any issues in your home life, personal life, want to vent, I'm a shoulder to lean on. We all need to band together and help one another. Austin, it was an absolute pleasure. I've been wanting to be on on an episode with you since I first started listening to you 6 months ago, man. So it's an absolute honor, and just thanks for having me, man.
Dude, it's been awesome. This has been a long time coming. I've been meaning to have you on for a long time, and I'm glad we finally were able to work this out. Even if Mike had to leave a little early, it's totally fine.
God damn it, Mike.
I know, always skipping out on the good parts. But yeah, I think it's been great having you on here, man. Great addition to the show. Love to have you again sometime. With that being said, everyone who's listening, thank you again for joining us with another episode of Mid-Tier Thoughts. Quick plug. We also have a Patreon now. I'm going to include that in the description below. So the Patreon right now, there's $1 tier, so $1 a month, which is nothing. That gets you access to our Discord channel, and that gets you well, actually, so far that's all it has. I do have a survey on there once you guys get on there to see what other kind of stuff you got, guys, you want to get in there. $3 a month right now gets you the Discord channel, shout out on the podcast, as well as we'll talk about potentially kind of changing up how that all works. I want to get some feedback from you guys to see what you would like to see on there. All money raised with that through the Patreon stuff. It's not just going to go to our pockets and get blown. It's going to go to me and Mike trying to get better audio and visual equipment so we can get some better quality stuff put out. Kind of upgrade from just using Xbox headsets and our phones to getting some real mics, getting some video going, and being able to do a few other things. There'll be more exclusive stuff coming down the line and potentially merch once we can get that up and running. So with that, thank you everybody for listening. Have a great time. See you on the next one.